Alright. Okay. Ready? Okay. Good afternoon or good evening or whether you're listening in the world. It might be even good morning. You might be having your breakfast. This is the Gritty Nitty Podcast. And I think we're up to episode 4, but it could be 3, it could be 5. Who knows? I don't know what order you're listening to. Fine level of gentlemen we have here this afternoon. My name's Tosca, and I'm kicking off proceedings, and we have 3 esteemed guests who are going to introduce themselves. To my left, I have young Paul. Take it away, mate.
Nice to see you guys again.
And you, Paul.
The 4th episode, I think it's getting stronger as we're going along. What are we doing, Michael?
Yeah, my name's Michael, and pleased to be here, and looking forward to today's session.
Yeah, and Mark Dempster, pleased to be here as well, to join our lovely people.
The estimable guest. If you want to know more about our guests, just listen to podcast 1, 2, 3, 5 or 6 or whatever, and you'll find out exactly what we're all about. But today we're excited to bring a new topic to the realm, a topic. We generally discuss a topic, and we're going to discuss what it is to be a man. Which is just saying it frightens me, just scares me, just saying it. And I want to kick it off myself by saying that my first recollection of being a man, or what that meant, or what it stood for, I brought up in the 70s and the 80s and that sort of thing, was that it was difficult. Do you know what I mean? My first kind of awareness of being a bloke was like, I wished I was, it was a bit like, I think I've been dealt the wrong hand. Do you know what I mean? I felt that what came with that, I can always remember my dad used to go to work, and my dad worked just up the road for the City of Westminster Polytechnic, and he had a terrible job as some sort of, run-of-the-mill accountant. He used to pay the pencil bills or something like that, what they got, and the paper bills, their A4 bills. But he used to go to work when it was dark, and he used to come back when it was dark. I used to lie on the sofa, and I used to nick his money when it fell out. but my feeling was, this is really difficult. Do you know what I mean? This is really difficult. Family, having to put food on the table, having to look after people. And as I've grown older and had my own family and that sort of stuff, I'm still struck with every now and again when there's a real sort of, I'd call it a moment of clarity. I kind of think, geez, I actually got here. Do you know what I mean? I actually got to this point, which I thought was really, really difficult. So I just want to throw that open, and anyone want to pick the thread up. Mark, you look rather keen. About what was it like as a kid? Watching your dad and what men around you, and and how you thought you would adapt. Was it something that you kind of thought yourself, I can't wait to do that, or did you want to be 12 for the rest of your life?
Yeah, sorry, Steve, so that whole thing, the man chopping the wood, bringing back the bacon type of attitude, I never really seen that as a child growing up with my father because of his alcoholism. So what I seen is sort of petty crime, some prison sentence, and then back out, and then him losing, sort of having psychiatric issues. So it was like, and the male figures in my family, the extended family, were involved in that. They were sort of hard. They were quite, because they all came from Anderson. There was a Roman Catholic family. There was 10 brothers. There was like 10 children, all boys and a couple of girls, and they were working class. They were poor, but they supported Celtic, and they were hard men, really. They liked to fight. They liked to go to the football. They were sort of rough. So my impression as a child was, I've got to be like them. I've got to demonstrate the same qualities. I've got to be hard. I've got to show no fear. If I have a fight in the playground, I can't turn my back. I've got to get in first before they you know, it's that sort of lion thing, you know, either I'm the hunted or I'm going to hunt, you know, so it was like, so alongside that was this narrative, right, and I think it really permeates Glasgow culture, working class Glasgow culture growing up, was that sectarianism, Catholic, you're Protestant, you don't like Protestants, you don't like Rangers supporters, so there's layers of sort of resentment within it all too, and separation, and this thing where I thought, you know, I've got to be like this, I've got to emulate this type of, I've got to chase girls, which is not changed that much.
Nothing changes.
I've got to chase girls, but you know, I've got to be successful at that, I've got to be charming, I've got to be charismatic, and the biggest concept of it really is that I don't feel fear, but in reality I felt so much fear. You know, and the other side of it, whenever I get into a fight, I was like terrified inside that I was going to get battered, or I was going, you know, so there was this thing of showing no fear all the time, but yet, because that's what men do, because it was all based on sort of John Wayne, you know, it was all based on these sort of role models who were like hard sort of men. So, but in reality, what I mean, that's a really big topic. What it is to be a real man. What you know, does a real man acknowledge their feelings? You know, are they emotionally intelligent? Are they?
So what I find quite interesting about what you've just said, and what's really reflected when I listen to it, is this thing about being hard, right? Yeah. So we're all brought up roughly in the same time.
Yeah.
And the essence of that, and you know, and it's interesting because I've got kids, but both my children are daughters. So that's not something that I kind of feel has been brought up into our home, the idea of hardness and that sort of stuff. But Michael, you know what I mean? Is that something that is reflective of your time of growing up? Men hard. I know, obviously, Mark's been brought up in Glasgow. You've been brought up in the south of England. Is that something that you can identify with as growing up as, you know, back in London in the 50s and you know, in the 60s? That
I used to read the Beano,
right?
And Desperate Dan was my sort of. Do you remember Desperate
I
Dan?
do.
He used to eat cow pie,
Aye.
and he had this big beard, and it was like this sort of, you know, that I don't know if that had an influence on me, but the cow pie used to weigh the table over, and it was everything was big and bolsterous, and Popeye I used to love. You know, I assume that if you eat spinach, you grow muscles. So, but for me, sort of on reflection, is the opposite in me. Yeah, the opposite in me. So as a young boy, whatever I was made up of wasn't from experience. It was from my parents. So there's that character building stuff that goes on in there. And out of my brother and sister, I was the middle child, and I suffered. I struggled. Yeah, I struggled from a very early age. Yeah, and so I remember one day, and I don't want to sort of make out my dad to be anything, that he was my dad, but he was a very weak man, but also a very, very strong man. He was a very violent man, but I could also see something in him that was a bit manipulative, and I wouldn't say coward-like, but there was that opposite in him that I inherited. Yeah. So growing up with that, I remember driving round the one-way system in Vauxhall, and I was only about 7, and my father had an argument with me and my mum in the car, and I don't want to decry him, but it got out of hand. Yeah. So the impregnation of fear, because I thought my dad was going to... I mean, I didn't realise that was going on at the time. I was 7, but the memory lives on, you know? I can remember it being in the car. And then there was another time where he was with Arthur and Ted, 2 brothers who our dear brother knows over there. And we was coming up Battersea Rise, yeah? And like I say, I'm not condoning violence. I'm just talking about my experience of men, yeah? So there was boxing going on. There was all that. They were club owners. There was all that sort of stuff going on, but not that you know that. And then 2 brothers, dear friends, and there was a guy in the street, and we was in an old Jaguar. And remember the old Jaguars years ago, the wheel hub was inside the back seat. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that, a bit older than you, Paul. And I used to sit on the wheel hub like that. And I remember driving past Millets, because there was always jeans outside, and I loved to fight whatever jeans they were. And then this guy appeared, and I got driven round the corner and parked up. So I'm nervous anyway.
How old would you be at this time?
9,
Okay.
8 or 9. And as we drove around the corner, they obviously had an argument with this guy. And that's not good for kids. I didn't see the argument. As the guy ran round the corner, he fell against the car. And the car I was in, it was Sod's Law. And his face went again. And I thought, my God. So that introduction of men fighting, whether I knew it or not, took a degree on in my being, yeah. So there was all them mixed emotions going on. So then there was an expectation, yeah. Then I was plucked out of London and taken down to Surrey, where I was promoted rugby and doing things like that. And we used to get taken to the football with Arthur and Brian. So there was all this going on. So the role models in my life, that's what it was. Now, if you nip into my mother's family, they was all hard-working flower sellers, and they had a joy about them. So that influenced me. My grandfather, John Watkins, he was a beautiful soul, and so that influenced me. Not that I knew, but to come into land, yeah. So I went to a school in Surrey. I used to have a couple of fights, but then I'd be very frightened, and that followed me all my life. You know, I didn't know what man was going to turn up. Yeah, and sometimes I didn't have a choice. It was just sporadic. Bang, in I go. And so this manhood, and when I started playing rugby, there were gentlemen, they were strong boys. They shook your hand afterwards, even if they broke your hooter. And so it was. I was confused. But my analogy of a man today, where I'd like to be, yeah. So so a coward runs. Or whatever, take the name coward out of it. Yeah. A man who's frightened runs. A man who's frightened attacks. Yeah, they're both similar emotions. Yeah, because I've been there. Yeah, so it all depends what that means. But I think a man in all walks of life, taking it away from violence, in decision making, in parenthood, it's about a man being able to stand right where he is and make a decision based on love. Yeah, love for ourselves, love for a fellow human being, love for our children. So I try to work that out. Am I a man? What does a man mean? You know, I thought a man meant you had to pull your trousers down, be with a pretty woman, had a big car. I've done all that. That's not being a man. I'm in prison. That's not being a man. I think being a man is being honest to oneself. And I think the sort of CV that I thought you had to be a man was maybe you had to be tough.
Right, okay. So again, we're taking it back to the essence of Mark's thing was, okay, that this hardness, this toughness, this kind of being the person that, you know, that stands up to stuff, is kind of quite important in what we would say was, you know, the evolution of man, right? Yeah, the evolution of man. So,
because what Michael's talking about is that to thine own self be true. The Shakespeare, you know, like Shakespeare said, when the Oracle of Delphi, know thyself, is like being authentic to yourself and being truthful. And both of those people, as he said, like running away, or I've done both, and then I felt terrible for running away, but then
how do you get to
forgiving yourself for doing that as well?
But how do you get to that authentic part of you? Yeah. So that has to be the journey of what my perception is. Yeah. What my understanding of it is, and then, you know, and how I see myself in respect of that, and what am I kind of prepared to stand up to and say, this is what I represent. But that's kind of further down the line, I think. But the last man, this man sitting next to me...
Can I just say something before you put on to Paul? Sorry, Paul. So, so whatever we're taught as men, or to be a man, so when we get to the age of, say, 16, so we think, but when you're 18, because you can go in a pub, when you're 21, you can get married. So we're told that we ain't told, but that's meant to be manhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you think, well, hold on a minute, I've had sex, I've got a car, and I'm going to a pub. Oh, that makes, well, it doesn't make us a man. And I think it determines you come of age. There's not an age on becoming a man.
Yeah.
You know, I like myself better today. So did I become a man at 61? I don't know. But I just think it's about finding one's truth. Yeah.
Okay.
And being kind to oneself. And that manly thing I then think comes out in us.
Okay, so as you pointed out, the third person in the room, well, actually the fourth person in the room, but the man sitting next to me, young Paul, growing up in Glasgow, same city as Mark over there. You know, what was the essence of manliness to you growing up? What did you see? What did you think to yourself? Well, you know, this is what needs to happen. This is what a man does. And can I fulfill that? You know what I mean? Is that me?
I think there's, excuse me, I think there's obvious stages when you've got to look at the youth and the development of the youth up until maybe 7 years of age. You get a grasp of what school life's all about, your social environment, how much food's getting put on the table. And in order to look at the true essence of what defines being a man, is actually implanted in you as a young kid growing up. So you get a couple of different stages. People use numerology. They use ages for birth to 7. What did you learn? What do you remember? And then for the years of 7 to the years of 14, what did you remember? And bear in mind, you're still developing that. The rule of thumb is, what Michael pointed out, when somebody turns 21, they might biologically be an adult in the beginning of a young man. Whether they carry the mental capacity for that maturity, I think it's got to be in tandem as you're growing up, because you get a lot of people who are very mature physically, but quite mature in the mind. And I'm not discriminating anybody like that, but it's an obvious fact. So when you get to the basis of growing up in environments like Mark's saying, I had the fortunate position to be in a deprived area when my dad had 2 single-decker buses, and he used them for football supporters, weddings, the odd orange walk that I never knew about. I just seen people with uniforms, and I loved the music, I loved the sound of it. But what I remembered was, and it's quite a synonymous, I've mentioned this before in other elements, but Glasgow was synonymous for whatever football teams were playing. Celtic and Rangers could never play in the same city on the same day. So the structures that was set out was Rangers would be playing away if Celtic was playing at home, and Celtic would be playing away if Rangers was playing at home. So I had the obvious advantage to go into all these games. Being a young boy, 7 years of age, with my dad sitting at the front coach, and the tradition at that time was they always had a hat for the driver, and I was given the hat. I was given the hat. Gave it to who was in charge of the bus. They went up to the patrons who were in the bus. The hat comes back, it's folded over, and it goes on my lap. I'm in charge of the cash. And I thought, that's a few quid, that.
Of course.
And my job was to count it along, but I had to give my dad it after it. But my primary job was cleaning the bus. And it started a broom, mop, pail, bucket, and then I decided, I'm going to get these seats up. And I don't know if it was to do with it was because it was a Rangers, the supporters bus that came back, flipped all the seats up. I probably get about 4 or 5 quid. But I declared it was mine. I'm getting 50% to clear, 50 pence to clear the bus, so that's mine. And what I remember is that Rangers supporters always lost more money. I don't know why. No, lost it. I earned off it. So I'm going to school at 5 and 6 quid. And if you can imagine an environment, we're in the playground, we're playing football, somebody smashes the ball and it goes right across the road. Bus goes on it, and we need a new ball. I'll get it.
You've got the money, you've got the readies.
Yeah, another one. You know, so it's always, I was used to having this money. And I was very early on thinking, I could do this. When I grow up to be a man, I want to be doing this for the money.
Yeah.
Right, because
Yeah.
fit and deprived there, if you've got 2 or 3 quid more than anybody else, you're well off.
Aye.
So I used to always buy and share things. Used to get people into the post office and get a pick and mix. The lady would be standing behind the counter saying, well, who's paying for this? And I went, me.
Yeah.
But
I
I
get
think
it.
if they try to find out where did you get this money, it came from big long story. But as you're growing up and you reach that threshold for your 0 birth to your 7th year, and then for your 7th year to another 7 year, which is to your 14th year, and then you're 21. I think the challenge, the question that Tosca put out for everybody is, what is the definition of being a man? And I think when you reach 21, you've jettisoned your childhood, your teenage years, you're on your own feet. And I think that journey, being a man and who you think that man you should be, is a work in progress.
Yeah, no, very much.
Yeah.
It's something in which where you can look at key parts of ages after 21. So you're 30, but you're still a young man. You're 40, you're still a young man.
Absolutely.
50, you're still a young man. But you take the years that you recognise, rewind that back. You're back to a teenager. You're back to a young kid. So it's to do with impressionable people. It might not be your dad. It might be your uncle. It might not be any of your family members. It could be your granddad. It could be your best mate. It's something in which I think where you see good traits in people and say, well, I never realised that. I'm going to nick that trait and weave it into how I feel it is because it's a nice thing. And so you build up, you grab things, you borrow words, you borrow mannerisms. So you look at people who are probably hero figures growing up that made a big interpretation in your life.
So if I took that back to the fact that you had, right, a distinct advantage, over everybody else. Like I can remember in 1972 when I was 7 having a pound, right? I had a pound and
Probably around about the same era.
right. So I remember I had a pound, right?
Aye.
And I bought more sweets than I'd ever bought in my life.
Yeah.
I had a huge bag of sweets, took them to school, and 3 or 4 days later, right? Yeah. And what that meant at that particular is I was top boy.
Yeah, for sure.
It was.
On the Monday, well, you get because it's the football supporters bus was either usually it wasn't a Saturday, not a lot of football on a Sunday back then. But I remember going to school on the Monday with the tissue wrapped into the coins so they don't make a noise. So you go to school and after it, bam, let's go to the shops. So you tend to become.
So you were the man.
You're the man.
But you're sharing that.
But
You're
it gives
not
you
being greedy
kudos.
about it.
It gives you kudos. Because I used to steal boxes. I used to give a paper run, and I used to steal. I used to go into the paper shop, and all the fruit and nut and the whole nut used to be. Anyway, I used to go bang, bang, bang a few of the boxes into my.
When an individual gets something that's physical, and they either consume it orally, or sniff it, or inject it, or do what they're doing with it,
Ready?
Right, ready. Right, let's do it. Let's do it.
they've adapted the mind.
Okay.
Right,
So
okay.
So Paul.
It's the mind that's adapted, not the drugs.
All right, we're rolling. Right. Rolling. So Paul, you were. So now you're in Scotland and you have the competitive advantage of getting this money from the coach. You're cleaning your dad's coach on a Saturday, and because he was taking all the football supporters, you count the money, and all of a sudden you've got this golden opportunity. You're cleaning the bus and you're finding at least 4 or 5 quid. What was that like? In spring of 1971.
1970, I'll probably bring it up to modern day. It's like winning a lottery for a couple of £100 every week. You go buy a scratch card. I didn't need to buy a scratch card, but mine was in there. It depends on how drunk the supporters was, how much money they had. And I genuinely think that they lost some of it when the hat gets put round for the driver anyway. So whether somebody's at the stages with football supporters, they used to have alcohol on the bus. So the loose change, it would fall out, get into the seats, but the 4 or 5 quid a week, that was a bit special. And then you get to a stage where I want to be like my dad. I want to have the buses. I know what's going in the hat. I don't know the logistics of people renting or hiring the bus, how much that costs, but I can see cash, coins in the hat, coins under the seats, and whatever was in the hat was my dad's. I'd probably get 50 pence out the hat for cleaning the bus, but whatever's on the bus under the seats was mine. And going to school with that, on that mindset that you're sharing it. There's no, it was a bad, deprived area. I'm not playing any violins, but a lot of people would know how. A lot of families never had fucking £5 a week. Beep.
Aye, absolutely.
No, seriously.
Yeah,
I got to a stage where looking up to being somebody who I would want to be as my dad, all of a sudden vanished. And the reason why he vanished is because he got nicked for robbing a bank. It was in prison. So he vanished from my life. Mum never spoke about it. It was just one of the elephant in the room moments. Whereas dad, I get toast and beans with my gran, toast and beans back. So when you find out your dad's in prison, it's a bit of kudos when you're in a deprived area that's full of villains anyway. And the whole problem about it is you're dealing with other people coming up to you, no family members, just other people in the area. Sorry to hear about your dad's son.
Aye.
And I used to think, is it my dad, is it my brother? I used to distance that part of it because it was totally negative. So I think in the whole essence of describing what is it to be a man, probably harvest most of the positive things for your younger life and drag it through. And maybe people talk about regressional therapy. You can do it yourself. You get in a situation where somebody might be more comfortable taking a particular substance to help them to self-medicate, so they get back to a situation that might have been a negative position in their life as a kid, but how they dealt with it, they become not a man because they're not a man yet. They're physically not capable. Mentally, they're capable. So when you get into teenage years, that things for the younger age helps to bolster that. And then the boisterous nature when you're teenagers, and then you're 21, you're either married, you've got kids, you're in university, you've got a job, or you're in prison for probably the best part of your life. So the whole essence here, I think the challenge of becoming what is a man is a personal choice. And me personally, I don't think I've achieved any of that greatness yet. A lot of people that are true men because they're physically well built and they can fight. They're settled in, they've held a marriage for many years, they've got kids and they're working, they're growing up. And then you get the top echelons, the grandfathers, who are grandfathers, but they even might have decided that they're no proper men yet.
I know.
So what is the age? And it's a great question to ask, but I think everybody's got a level, and then when you get to that level, that you do think that you're getting there as a man. Did you use as much of that information you got as a kid, growing up, to bolster your position? Or do you look through it in another sense and saying, becoming a man, do you replicate your hero figure as a dad, or as a brother, or as an uncle? What are you searching out for? Or are you happy that you became your own identity with certain strands?
There's no. Do you know what's interesting about it? There's no when you were saying there, Paul, I was thinking there's no sort of narrative, there's no sort of conversation as we grow up about what it is to be a. Say.
Okay, so that's
can I just finish on this, right?
Yeah.
Because it's important. I think is. Say maybe in African tribes or something, there'd be initiation. There'd be initiation rites. You'd be sitting around a fire. There'd be the boy at 14. The Jews do it all the time when they come into Shabbat and they do that transition. There isn't really in modern day society. So no one. But then what I was going to say is that I always had this thing about my father that a man is like somebody. So although he was hard, I perceived him to be really hard. But then at a certain point, when I was making amends to my father, years later when he got into recovery, when he got sober, I was in Egypt with him, and I took him to Egypt to make this amend to him, and I was standing in front of the pyramid. I'll never forget it. I was standing in front of Cheops, and I said to my dad, we've been at loggerheads all these years, but really, you're my father. right? And I love you as my father. And I seen this crack in that mask, right? The mask that he projected for all my life, really. I seen this crack, a wavering, and I could see the emotion. I could see, and within a couple of seconds, I jumped on it because I seen that there's this window that I can get through, and he started crying, right? And he regressed. What I seen in front of me was like a child, really, and all the pain of his life, really, the things that had happened to him.
Do you think as your dad's regressing, getting into a childish emotion, did you feel that you were getting stronger and became the more prominent partner?
That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
But there's a crossover.
Yeah.
At one point, that's definitely. I remember taking him and hugging him, and I put my hand behind his head, and it was like
You're the strength.
child.
Yeah.
He was the child, and I was the adult. Yeah. And there was this moment, and I know, honest to God, in that moment, I thought, if my dad dies tomorrow, there's been this thing that's happened here, which is incredibly powerful, that I would never have experienced. This spiritual, emotional connection.
Okay, so I want to. Okay, so the subject is, what is it to be a man? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and we could be kind of really willy-nilly about it, and it is what you think it is, and blah blah blah, and and you could be this and it could be that. But would you say your dad let you down?
What, in that moment?
No. Did you say throughout your life your father let you down?
Oh yeah. I'd say my father let me down because of his alcoholism. I think because he didn't know, and he didn't have the willingness to really change. That he never went to meet, so he just carried on in this really destructive.
So there
path.
is an image. There is an image, and there's an understanding of what you think a man does.
Correct.
Yeah, and there was a lack of integrity at times around. If we're looking at what is a man,
So a man is someone with
somebody with integrity, right? So you would say that. Look, this is just concepts, isn't it? But basically, you'd say, okay, to be a real man, you'd have a value system that you'd stand for something. You wouldn't fall down. You would stand by a certain value system that you would adhere to. Now, we grew up in.
Can I just ask you a quick question? I'll just stop you there.
Aye.
Do you think you have that?
I think I've got two sides. I've got the shadow. I think I've got the ability to do that.
Right.
But
okay.
Equally, I've got the ability to shift over.
Okay. So when's that
got
part of
awareness now? You understand it. We never used to understand it before.
Okay, but when's that? But when? So okay. So I'd say that let's just say a man is a set of concepts. Right, and you mentioned integrity to be one, right? Yeah,
as a value.
As some sort of value, and we could say honesty. We could say Michael said love earlier on. Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking to myself, when do those get challenged? Like, when does integrity get challenged? Do you know what I mean? When does that? When it.
Okay, so when it gets challenged, right, if I'm sitting with my best friend's wife, right, or my best friend, right, see, right, no, just...
He pointed at me.
No, right, no, I'm just trying to think an example, but because that's me, it's relevant to me. It's not at all with Michael, but I'm sitting, right, say I'm on a bus and I find a purse, right, on the bus. When I'm walking back just now, I find a purse and I go like that, and my head goes, look inside, see how much is in it, right? And then there's another part that says, just go straight to the police station and hand this in, or go straight to the bus station and hand this purse in.
Right, okay.
So where it gets challenged is the shadow part of me, right? The greed that sort of wants it.
But what if you're getting back to your hand on an empty purse if you don't look inside it?
Yeah,
what you handing in? An empty purse or a purse with money?
I know.
You would open
I know.
Of course you would look in it.
I know. Right. But you can feel the purse, because this has happened to me. I could feel.
Could be rollers out of hair in the purse. You don't know if it's right. Look in. Stop the nonsense.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's probably a bad example. Forget the purse, right? Forget the purse.
No. The purse might be okay. So what? So the point I'm trying to make is that clearly we're all challenged at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's okay is it the admission? Yeah, is the admission part of that process? Is it, there's this set of principles that I would like to kind of adhere to, yeah? And the essence of man is to say, I'm just trying my best to do this, right? So I think to myself that I like to become a real liberal, right? I like to think I'm a real liberal, and I'm really easy kind of going guy, right? And that I think that, you have the right to be whatever the right you have to be is, right? But once some sort of social commentator, gets on the other side of what I believe, I feel myself going the other way.
Do you know what, Tosca? Go on, sorry.
And it's something I really hate about myself.
Because they're influences.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, and I kind of think, what is that about me that I can't stand in my truth?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Do you know what I think it is? When Paul was talking about, so this 7-year itch thing, from 1 to 7, to 7 to 14. If anything gets in the way in them growing years, it stunts something, yeah? So it could be child abuse, emotionally, physically, sexually, a 5-year-old child. So that does not create the body growing at the way it's meant to grow. So a 3-year-old, you think like a 3-year-old, intelligence might come into that. So at 5, 7, and then you get to 14, and they're years where you're just absorbing. You haven't really got an opinion, I don't think. Right. You just go along with the parent thing, And I remember when I was a really young boy, my dad pretended that he was Tarzan's son. He did, So I used to go and get my sister from Girl Guides in Stockwell.
Aye.
He gave me this book. It was as big as me. It was a big Tarzan book. It was Jai, I think. Was it Guy or Jai?
Yeah, Jai. Jai was in it.
In the front, there was a scene with Tarzan and Jane and the little kid. And I'd go to him, and he'd go, "Whatever you do, don't tell anyone I'm Tarzan's son." So.
Steve's in the kitchen.
So I'd say, "Do the call, Dad," and I can remember him, looking, all right, and he'd done a Tarzan call that was Tarzan's son. It was perfect.
What's that?
And he'd go, shh. And I carried this book about. Anyway, I then get to learn, I can't remember what it was, that my dad is not, I think it was my granddad who said, don't listen to that shit. He said, I'm costermonger. I was devastated, but obviously we learned not to say things. A number of years later, only a few years later, they had a car front, Arthur and Brian, over at Hendon, And who was the big Tarzan man? What was his name?
Johnny Weissmuller.
Johnny Weissmuller. Now he's in this caravan, with my dad and Arthur and a couple of others, and I'm with young Terry, and for the audience, that's a friend of ours. And they say the finger's in there, Tarzan. Now, I don't have the ability, which I didn't know at the time. I didn't know at the time what I was thinking. But what I must have been thinking, my dad's an effing liar. He's not Tarzan's son, so I don't believe Tarzan's in there. This is what I do, Okay. They're all sitting behind the desk, it's a small caravan. The actor, Tarzan, I run into the caravan and kick him right in the shin, right? This famous actor. Now, when I look back on that, I wasn't working out what that meant, but I was obviously very disappointed. I was so hurt Brian wasn't Tarzan's son. Now they're telling me Tarzan's sitting in it, but as I kick him, boom, he's gone like that. I've fallen forward. They tried to grab me. A picture fell off the thing and hit me right in the eye. So I got stitches. So working all that out, as I've got older, whether I had an issue of believing people, I don't know. But it was massive for me. I was devastated. And another time, what they'd done to me, Eddie McCready used to be the manager of Chelsea.
Yep.
And when I was a young boy, not blowing my own trumpet, but I had a level of, I weren't bad at football. I played whatever. So I get two situations arrive, the two of them again, the deadly duo. So I have a trial for Crystal Palace, not because I was brilliant. A lot of us got a trial, and it was intermediates. Who's on the touchline? Brian and Arthur, in these leather coats. And I'm about 14, and the kid in goal is 17. Yeah, he had sideburns. I think he was a bit of a ringer, big hairy legs, big hairy arse. He was one of them big boys. But we're playing against an older side to see how we cope. Yeah, there's an altercation gone on, there's an argument gone on, and as he's gone up, he's hit me in the eye there with an elbow. I hit the floor, me lips quivering like that, and my dad. There's all the football coaches there. Arthur had arranged this for me. My dad come running on and hit the goalkeeper with his hand round the face. It ended my football career. I was devastated. I got taken off. Brian, don't do that, don't do that. He's gone, don't you ever hit my son. Wallop. He'd done that all my life, so he subdued my growth. Yeah. I was his son. He was the one who was in charge. But the final quest of it was, they phoned me. Yeah, I mean, listen, they terrorised me, both of them, yeah, Arthur and Brian, but in a funny way. I was their little yardstick for a laugh. They used to bunk me in at football. So I was influenced by these two men. But so the phone goes in my house, yeah, and I pick the phone up, and Arthur has come on with a Scottish accent and fannying his Eddie McCready. So he's gone to me. He went, I can't do the accent. Yeah. I was at the game the other night. I'm sorry how it ended for you, but look, we've seen you and we want to give you a trial at Chelsea. I've gone to my mum, or whatever. Mum, it's Eddie McCready. It was Arthur and Brian. They give the phone, they're going, can we speak to your mum and dad? So I'll give the phone to my mum. And then she goes to my dad and Arthur, oh, you pair, because they was always at it. I run up to my bedroom and I remember I cried my eyes out that I wouldn't have made it as a football player. So those influence, I think they have something in the growth as us growing. So it's about influence, and it's about, if we're allowed to grow at that pace where we understand at 17 or whatever that it consists. And I think if we're...
Could I also say that if someone knocks you out playing football and they're 15 and they're 17 and you're 14, isn't it your job as a dad to kind of sort that situation out?
Yeah, but not the way they did.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I kind of get what you're saying.
It might be, but that instruction towards me then suggests to me, if my kids are in trouble, I've got to have a fight with someone.
But maybe sometimes you do, though.
Yeah, but we have done. But is that the right way to be? Maybe sometimes you have to be. But if we're trying to grow as men, because men we think is macho. Well, I think men is kindness, peaceful, wisdom, guidance, yeah? So if we're being guided into... My grandson, and I'll end on this, my grandson's 14 years old, yeah, 13, 14, yeah? And he's of Irish descent, yeah? So his dads can have a fight and box and all that, but life's changed for them. They live in southern Spain, yeah? So my grandson, he was very, very bright, a very, very clever boy. And there was a part of him that, I don't know, he was a bit sensitive. The last year, he's been in the boxing gym, yeah? And I watched him box on Instagram yesterday, and I could see a very beautiful man exercising a gift that he's been taught. He's learned how to box, not to hurt people. He's learned how to defend himself, and he was articulate in what he was doing, and I could see it in his character. It weren't rowdy, it weren't brash. But when he come over to see me last week, I thought, what's happening with my Paddy? I could sense that there was a little bit of overconfidence in him, yeah? Just certain things that he was doing, and I thought, wow. Now, my wife says that's good for him because he's a lovely kid, yeah? But I'm very protective towards this kid. I have an arm over him, like we all are. We all adore him. And I spoke to him, and I said, son, what I don't want you to do is lose that beautiful humility of character you've got to be kind to people. Don't let learning to box extend yourself to be a little bit tough now, yeah? Just be cool. And if you can defend yourself, it's lovely. Now, my dad would have said, fucking hit him over the head with a lump of iron. That's what I've been told from Sutty and Arthur and Brian. Yeah. Hit him up, don't let no one have a go at you. You know, I'd go home with black eyes or whatever. They'd make me go and have a fight over the park. And Arthur and Brian, they was very influential in my life.
Okay, so
would turn up. So I don't think.
Okay, so is that a generation thing?
Maybe pre-war.
Some of it, yeah.
Yeah, is that a generation thing?
Yeah.
Because in my mind,
I'm not saying it's wrong, Tosca.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the influence that make us be who we are.
Right. Okay. So
or help us.
It's still protective. It's still integrity. It's still love. It's still kindness. But they can be affected by circumstances.
But that was all discipline. They put it as discipline, isn't it? I mean, look, we all grew up in an era when it was all the belt and the cane and. It's a very changed. We're living in a very different society 50, 30, 40 years later, isn't it? Where, I mean, if it's looked upon now as abuse, isn't it? Really, child, it'd be to get the belt or to get the cane and to get, that was looked upon back then. Is like, you got a good hiding if you stepped out of line, but that then transcended right out to everything. Really was like, this is the way you deal with these situations, because if you don't deal with it that way, it's not going to get dealt with. I think. I mean,
so the essence of man has changed over the years.
Oh yeah, and we're still.
I think on that subject that Mark just slightly touched upon is when you've got unruly kids, maybe between the ages of 14, 16. Back then, if their parents couldn't sort them out, they went to court and were sentenced to 3 months detention.
Yeah.
But before they've got the 3 months detention, they've been a bit unruly in school with the corporal punishment, with the belt, used to take the piss out of the teachers. So that pain transferred from a leather belt to their hand, to their brain to say, I'm out of here. That is punishment. It's a painful thing. And then when they get put on to the short, sharp shock treatments, that was the whole essence. It was ex-military. It was to toughen people up, to make you a stronger man in the future, be accepting this sort of discipline. But the people who were dispensing the discipline were too eager to do it. They created a lot of enemies. People actually liked
giving you the pain.
Prison officers liked giving out a bit of pain. And there's one occasion where I mentioned, well, I know you've got a bit of growth, Tosca, right? Me trying to get a bit of growth. Yous guys, me 16, can't shave. But in the morning you can done for a shave, you get a pair of shorts on, towel over your left arm, you get a plastic mug in there.
Detention centre?
The Glenoco Detention Centre in Kilmarnockshire in Scotland.
Tough.
Was tough, the first day getting done, razor, and I never said no thank you. It was no, I don't shave. And it was an Irish.
I can tell that's not a good idea.
Right? So by the time I said no, I don't shave, he's went stand over there, and I can hear other people come on. Razor, no thank you, son. I thought, right, I've got to say no thank you, sir, but I forgot to say sir. And he's went, razor. I went, no thanks. Stand over there. All the rest of the crews went in. He's come over. I don't know if you remember seeing the Tango advert. Somebody's at the bus store. By the time I've went, yes, thank you. I've took this razor on. But I never took the cap off it to expose the blades. Put the foam on my face. And I looked in this mirror. I had Red Hand's ulster. On my face. That discipline never worked. It just made you more resentful.
That's true, yeah.
But you were sent there to make you a better person in society further down the line.
Didn't work.
Made you feel a bit more resentful.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Okay,
so
go on.
I was just thinking, should we go on to the next? Should we?
Yeah. So I just want to kind of conclude.
He's trying to make your job.
No, just because I was thinking if each podcast is going to be, because I'm just thinking how we.
Well, I think we should. I think we got enough for that actually. I think we
for
got,
that one.
Was it good? Was it good?
Yeah. I think it was good. I think it was really good.